My grandpa spent $59,000 for a special birthday trip with the whole family. But at the airport, my mom told him, "We forgot your ticket. Go home." I offered him my seat, and she slapped me. My mom slapped me across the face in the middle of the Denver airport when I offered to give my ticket to my grandfather. The sound was so loud that several passers-by looked over. I stood there holding my burning cheek and looked at her in shock. There was no pity or doubt in her eyes, only cold determination. "You stay with your grandfather and don't cross me anymore. Do you understand?" I still dream about that moment. That smell of coffee mixed with the nervousness of the passengers and my grandfather's voice when he said, "Savannah, baby, don't worry. The main thing is that you all have a good rest." I would give anything to go back to that moment and do things differently. But I'll start from the beginning. Grandpa Chester spent $59,000 on this trip to Hawaii. It was a lot of money for our family, but he said, "I want us all to spend time together while I still can." He was 76, and after Grandma Rose died, he often talked about how quickly life passes. From the beginning, my mother Gloria was against Grandpa coming with us. "Chester, do you realize it's a long flight? It's 6 hours to Honolulu," she said when Grandpa first proposed the idea 3 months ago. "Gloria, I'm not weak, I'm just old," he replied with that soft smile I loved so much. But Mom had her reasons. My grandfather had stomach problems. Serious problems that began after my grandmother's death. Irritable bowel syndrome, the doctors said. He would often run to the toilet, sometimes not in time, and it was really inconvenient, especially for his mom, who always cared about what people would think. "Savannah, you know what I'm talking about," she whispered to me on the phone. "Just imagine, we're on an airplane and he's... what am I going to tell the other passengers?" I worked as a nurse in the Sunny Valley nursing home and saw much worse things. For me, my grandfather's problems were not something to be ashamed of. It was just part of aging, part of life. But my mom saw the world differently. My brother Dexter and his wife Tiffany were neutral. They wanted a free vacation, and they didn't care who paid for it. Dexter worked at an auto parts warehouse, and Tiffany was a cashier at a supermarket. Hawaii was a dream they could never have afforded on their own. But Grandpa had already paid for it. The Grand Waikiki Hotel, 5 stars, rooms with ocean views, even excursions booked in advance. Mom was trapped by her own greed. She couldn't give up such luxury, but she didn't want to endure the inconvenience either. And then she came up with an idea. The morning of June 23rd began with a commotion. We were all gathering at my grandfather's house at 5 in the morning to catch the 9:30 flight. My grandfather was ready at 6 o'clock. He hardly slept with excitement. He dressed in his best suit, the same one he used to wear to work when he still had his own plumbing company. "Girl, I can't believe we're going to Hawaii," he told me as I helped him with his suitcase. "You know, Grandma Rose has always wanted to see the volcanoes. I'll take pictures for her." I felt bitter at his words. Grandpa was still talking to Grandma, as if she were somewhere nearby. The doctor said that this was normal for elderly people after losing a partner, but I was worried. The taxi arrived on time, a huge minivan that Grandpa had ordered for all of us. Dexter and Tiffany sat in the back, I sat in the middle with my grandfather, and my mom sat in the front next to the driver. All the way to the airport, she was strangely silent. At the airport, the usual fuss began for our family. Dexter couldn't find his passport, Tiffany complained that her suitcase was too heavy, and Mom was nervous about the lines. Only my grandfather remained calm, helping everyone as usual. We checked in, handed over our luggage, and got to security. Grandpa kept all our tickets in his old leather folder. He always liked to organize everything himself. And then my mom suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my God, Chester, where's your ticket?" Grandpa looked at her in confusion, then at the folder in his hands. "It's supposed to be here, like I put it here." Mom quickly went through all the papers in the folder. There were tickets for everyone, for me, for her, for Dexter, for Tiffany. Only Grandpa's was missing. "Chester, you forgot it! It was at home on the kitchen table. I saw it there." I saw my grandfather's face turn white. He went through all the papers again with trembling hands, hoping for a miracle. "But I was sure. I checked everything 3 times last night." "Dad, what are we going to do now?" My mom sounded so desperate that I almost believed her. "The flight is in an hour, the ticket is at home, and we're here." Grandpa sat down on a chair at the check-in desk. He suddenly looked much older than his 76 years. "Children, go without me," he said quietly. "I'm going home. Don't ruin your vacation because I'm forgetful." "Grandpa, no!" I exclaimed. "Take my ticket. I'm staying here, and you're going with the rest of the family. My mom turned to me sharply. Savannah, don't be silly. You have to go. But it was Grandpa's idea. He paid for everything. Savannah, my mom's voice was sharp. That's enough, I insisted. Mom, it's only fair. Grandpa has been planning this trip for so long, dreaming about it. And then my mom slapped me, right there in the middle of the crowd at the airport. Dexter and Tiffany were silent, looking at the floor. They weren't about to lose their free Hawaii because of a family drama. Gloria, the grandfather stood up from his chair. You don't have to yell at the child, it's my fault. Son, come on, we have to get to the gate. His mother took Dexter's hand. Savannah, take care of him, and call me when you get home. I watched my family walk to the gate. My mom didn't look back once. Dexter gave me a quick wave, but Tiffany was too engrossed in her phone. Grandpa stood next to me, small and dejected. Savannah, I'm so sorry, he whispered. I've ruined everything. Grandpa, it's not your fault, I said, hugging him. But deep down, I knew the truth. The ticket was not forgotten. Mom had hidden it on purpose or thrown it away. This whole story was a performance to get rid of my grandfather without giving up his money. We sat at the airport for another half an hour, watching their plane taxi to the runway. My grandfather was silent, and I could see tears running down his cheeks. Let's go home, Grandpa, I finally said. Yes, child, home. The ride home was long and painful. Grandpa sat next to me in the taxi, looking out the window, and I could see him biting his lower lip, a habit he had since childhood, according to my grandmother. He did this when he was very upset. You know, Savannah, he suddenly spoke up as we drove past the mall where he used to buy gifts for the whole family at Christmas. I understand why Gloria didn't want me to go. I turned to him. Grandpa, what are you saying? I am not a fool, child. I know that my problems with the toilet. It's inconvenient for everyone, especially on an airplane. His honesty impressed me. Grandpa was always straightforward, but he rarely talked about things that upset him. I thought this vacation would help us get closer, he continued. After your grandmother died, I feel so lonely, and you all have your own lives, your own problems. Grandpa, we love you. You do, baby, and the others, he sighed. The others put up with me as long as they need me. These words hurt my heart, because I knew he was right. Mom really did put up with Grandpa. Dexter came to him only when he needed money to repair his car or something else. I was the only one who visited him just for fun, to talk, watch TV together, or help with the housework. The taxi stopped at his house on Maple St. It was a small one-story house with white walls and blue tiles that my grandparents had bought 30 years ago. Back then, the neighborhood was new and promising. Now the houses around them are aging along with their owners. $60, the driver said. Grandpa took out his wallet and gave him $70 without haggling. Keep the change, he said tiredly. Grandpa usually counted every cent, not out of stinginess but out of caution. He grew up during the Great Depression and always said, money loves an account. But today he was too depressed to bargain. We walked into the house and my grandfather went straight to his room. I stayed in the kitchen, looking at the table where, according to my mother, the forgotten ticket was supposed to be. There was only yesterday's newspaper and a cup of half-drunk morning coffee on the table. I searched the entire kitchen. Maybe the ticket really fell somewhere? I looked through all the drawers, looked behind the refrigerator, checked the trash can. There was nothing. Then I went to my grandfather's room. He was lying on the bed, not taking off his clothes, looking at the ceiling. Grandpa, can I check your things? Maybe the ticket is still somewhere? Of course, child. But why would you need it? The plane is already in the air. I methodically went through all his things, the closet, the chest of drawers, even the pockets of his clothes. The ticket was nowhere to be found. But in the bottom drawer of the dresser, I found something else, an old box of documents. There were receipts for everything related to the trip, hotel payments, excursion bookings, even a check from the travel agency for all 5 tickets, including my grandfather's. 5 tickets, not 4. Grandpa, did you buy 5 tickets from the agency? Of course, for the whole family. Why? I showed him the receipt. It was written in black and white. 5 airline tickets, Denver-Honolulu, flight UA 445, June 23rd, with my grandfather's signature and the agency's seal. So where's my ticket? asked my grandfather, sitting up on the bed. I didn't know what to say. If the ticket was bought, it had to go somewhere. Either someone took it or someone hid it, and the only person who could have done that was my mom. Savannah, do you think Gloria did it on purpose? I don't know, Grandpa, but something's not right. The phone rang at 8 in the evening. Mom was calling from Honolulu. Savannah? How's Dad? Her voice was cheerful, carefree. I could hear music and laughter in the background. He's upset. Well, he'll get over it. How's the hotel? Do you look at the photos on Instagram? I didn't. I didn't want to see my family having fun at the expense of my grandfather's hurt feelings. Mom, I found a receipt. Grandpa bought 5 tickets, including his own. A pause. The music in the background suddenly became quieter. So what? What happened to his ticket? Savannah, don't start investigating. Dad is forgetful. Everyone knows that. But no buts. Just take care of him and don't bother me with nonsense. I'm on vacation. She hung up the phone. I stood there, holding the phone in my hand, and finally realized that my mother had really gotten rid of my grandfather on purpose. She had taken his money, his dream of a family trip, and thrown him away like an unnecessary thing. The next morning, I went to my grandfather's house with a bag of groceries and found him in the garage, sitting among old tools and photographs. On his lap was a yellowed folder with the words, Claiborne Plumbing Service, written on it. Savannah, look, he said, showing me an old photo. This is me and the guys in '97. I had 12 men working for me back then. In the photo, my grandfather looked about 50 years old, wearing a work jumpsuit and a proud smile. Men with tools stood around him, near 3 vans with the company logo. The best plumbers in Denver, he continued. Jimmy Rodriguez could fix any pipe. And Tommy Wilson, he was a genius with boilers. I'm sorry I closed everything down. Grandpa closed his business 5 years ago, after his grandmother died. He said that there was no point in working without her. Grandma Rose kept all the documentation, communicated with customers, planned routes. She was the brain of the business, and my grandfather was the hands. Why didn't you give the business to one of the boys? I asked. I thought about it. But after my grandmother's funeral, I started feeling strange. My stomach was hurting. I was constantly running to the toilet. Doctors said it was stress. How can you run a business when you don't look like yourself? He put the photo back in the folder and sighed. Sold everything to Mike Anderson from Denver Plumbing. He gave me good money, so I can't complain. But sometimes I think maybe I rushed it. I sat down next to him on an old toolbox. Grandpa, how much money do you have left? I'm not asking out of curiosity, just... Why not tell me? You're my favorite granddaughter, he smiled. 300,000 in the bank, plus the house. It's worth another 150. I'm not a millionaire, but it's enough for old age. $450,000. For our family, it was a lot of money. Mom worked for an insurance company and earned $35,000 a year. Dexter in the warehouse, even less. And here was an opportunity to provide for everyone, forever. Does Mom know about this money? I asked. Grandpa nodded. Gloria is very interested in my finances. She's always asking if everything is okay with the accounts if I need help. She is a caring daughter. There was no irony in his voice. Grandpa really believed that his mother cared about him, not his money. Or maybe he didn't want to admit the truth. We went inside the house, and my grandfather put the kettle on. He moved slowly, cautiously, like people who feel their age. There were various papers on the kitchen table, electricity, gas, and telephone bills. Grandpa, do you pay all the bills yourself? Of course. As long as my hands are working, I can do it myself. But I noticed that he took the gas bill twice, as if he had forgotten that he had already looked at it. And when he was making tea, he put sugar where salt usually is. Grandpa, you put the sugar in the wrong place. Huh? He looked at his hands in confusion. Oh yes, I guess I was thinking. It was nothing, but it bothered me. Grandpa had always been very precise and organized, and now he started making little mistakes. How is your memory? I asked him cautiously. It's fine. Sometimes I forget where I put my glasses, but who doesn't at my age? He sat down at the table with a cup of tea and looked thoughtfully out the window. Sometimes I think my grandmother is talking to me, especially in the evening when I sit in her chair and watch TV. It's like she's right there with me. What does she say? Different things. She reminds me to water the flowers, turn off the gas. Sometimes she scolds me for not changing into my home clothes, for wearing a suit all day. His words made me sad. Grandpa missed his grandmother so much that his mind created the illusion of her presence. The phone rang and Grandpa picked it up. Hello? Oh, Gloria, hi. Yes, everything is fine. Savannah is with me. What? Oh, yes, of course. He handed me the phone. Mom wants to talk to you. Savannah, how is Dad? My mom's voice sounded concerned, but I knew it was just a mask. He's fine. He's a little upset about what happened yesterday. Listen, I was thinking, maybe I should move in with him for a few months, see how he's doing on his own. This was unexpected. My mom had never offered to help my grandfather. Why all of a sudden? Well, he's an old man, and after yesterday, maybe he needs some company? I looked at my grandfather, who was sitting at his desk, sadly looking through his papers. I don't know, you'll have to ask him. Mom talked to my grandfather for another 5 minutes. He nodded, said, yes, yes, and sometimes smiled. When he hung up, he looked satisfied. Gloria wants to move in with me for a while. She says she's worried about me. Do you want her to move in? It would be nice. Sometimes it's a little scary on my own, especially at night. My grandfather never complained about being alone, but I saw how he changed after my grandmother died. He became quieter, more withdrawn. Perhaps the company would really help him. In the following days, I came to my grandfather every evening after work. We watched the news, played checkers, and I cooked him dinner. He told me about the old days, how he met my grandmother, how he built his business. You know, Savannah, he said one evening, after I'm gone, will you take care of my grave, next to my beloved in Greenwood Cemetery? Grandpa, don't talk like that. Come on, child, I'm 76. I have to think about everything. I've already written everything in my will. Everything will be fair. What did you write? But he just smiled mysteriously. You'll see, when the time comes. A week later, my mom actually moved in with my grandfather. She brought 2 suitcases and said she was taking a month's vacation. I'm going to take care of my dad, she explained to me. You see, he has become forgetful. It was true. Over the past week, my grandfather had forgotten my name several times, calling me Rosa. Once he tried to pay for groceries with money he pulled out of his sock instead of his wallet. It was a small thing, but it accumulated. It's good that you moved out, I told my mom. He needs help. Of course he does. And someone has to keep an eye on his finances. Otherwise, he might deceive someone, take advantage of his gullibility. Mom was always thinking about money. Even when she was worried about her grandfather, she was primarily concerned about his income. At first, everything was fine. My mom cooked, cleaned, and took my grandfather to the doctor for routine checkups. But then I started to notice strange things. When I came home in the evening, my mom always found a reason why I should leave early. Dad's tired, don't bother him. He has a headache. He's already asleep. And my grandfather really looked tired, silent, absent. When I tried to talk to him, he often forgot what we had just talked about. Mom, should we take him to a neurologist? I asked one evening. I already did. The doctor says it's age-related changes. It's nothing, you just need to take care of your nerves. But something was bothering me. Grandpa was changing too fast. A month ago, he was cheerful, interested in everything around him. Now he was sitting in a chair and staring aimlessly at one point. Grandpa, how are you feeling? I asked when my mom went out to the store. I feel tired and my head is foggy. Gloria says it's from the medicine. What kind of medicine are you taking? I don't remember. Gloria gives it to me, I take it. She knows better. Mom returned from the store with a bag of medicines. The doctor prescribed new drugs, she explained, for memory and anxiety. I looked at the boxes. The names were complicated Latin. I knew one drug. It was given to patients with dementia in our nursing home. But why was my grandfather prescribed such a strong medicine? Mom, can I talk to the doctor? Why, I figured it out. Dad is in good hands. My mother's tone did not imply any objections, but I was still worried. Something was wrong with my grandfather, and I couldn't figure out what it was. The next day I came early, hoping to find my grandfather alone, but my mom was at home and greeted me with a displeased look. Savannah, why didn't you tell me you were coming? Dad is resting. I went into the living room. My grandfather was sitting in his chair watching TV, but his eyes were kind of empty. Grandpa, how are you? He looked at me as if he was trying to remember who I was. Savannah, when did you get home from college? I was 28 years old and had graduated from college 6 years ago. Grandpa, I work as a nurse, remember? Oh, Yes, of course. He rubbed his temples. My head is all foggy. You see, said my mom, it's getting worse. Yesterday he forgot how to turn on the TV. Dr. Ryder. I had never heard this name before. Grandpa had always been treated by Dr. Thompson. Where is Dr. Thompson? Ryder is a memory specialist. Thompson referred me to him. Grandpa's voice came from the living room. Girls, come here. We went back to him. Grandpa looked worried. Am I sick? He suddenly asked. You're taking memory medicine, I said cautiously. Medicine? He rubbed his temples. I don't remember any medicine. Mom brought a bottle of pills. The label read, haloperidol, 5 milligrams. Haloperidol. I knew this drug from work. It is an antipsychotic drug for severe mental disorders. The dose was too high for my grandfather. Mom, it's a very strong medicine. The doctor knows best. I decided to check out this Dr. Ryder. In the evening, I searched for information on the internet, but I couldn't find any David Ryder, a neurologist. Then I called Dr. Thompson. Mr. Claiborne? I didn't refer him to any Ryder. The last time I saw him was 2 months ago, and everything was fine. That evening, on my way home, I decided to talk to my grandfather alone tomorrow, to find out what was really going on with him, and why my mom was so actively interfering in his treatment. But I didn't know that tomorrow might be too late. Time was not working in my favor, and my mom acted faster than I thought. When I went to my grandfather's house the next morning with the plan to stop the medication, my mother met me at the door with a grim look on her face and a folder of documents in her hands. Savannah, we need to talk. Last night, Dad had a seizure. We had to call an ambulance. My heart sank. What kind of seizure? Why didn't you call me? I didn't want to disturb you in the middle of the night. The doctors examined him and made an official diagnosis, the initial stage of senile dementia with aggressive manifestations. Mom showed me the documents. There was indeed a stamp of Mercy General Hospital and the signature of a doctor I did not know, Dr. Wilson. What aggressive manifestations? Grandpa was never aggressive. Savannah, you don't live with him all the time. I see him changing. Last night he didn't recognize me, thought I was a burglar, and threw a cup at me. Look. Mom showed me the bruise on her arm. It looked convincing, but I knew that bruises can be made artificially. And then he started shouting that someone was stealing his money. The neighbors could hear, so we had to call an ambulance. I read the document again. Everything looked official. The right seals, signatures, but something bothered me. Everything was happening too fast. Where is Grandpa now? He's sleeping. The doctors gave him a strong sedative. They said he will be very sleepy for the next few days. Can I see him? It's better not to. He might not recognize you and get agitated again. And the doctor has strictly forbidden any emotional shocks. My mom blocked my way to my grandfather's room. For the first time in my life, I saw something like fear in her eyes. But not for my grandfather. For myself. Mom, I want to talk to the doctor who examined him. Dr. Wilson said everything I needed to know. At my dad's age, this is normal. He needs constant care and special medication. She showed me a new bottle. Risperidone. 2 pills 3 times a day. Risperidone. Another antipsychotic drug, even stronger than haloperidol. In this dose, it could turn anyone into a vegetable. Mom, it's too much. This dose could put you in a coma. Savannah, I'm tired of your medical advice. The real doctors here have diagnosed me and prescribed treatment. I called Mercy General that evening. I was told that Dr. Wilson did not exist. No patient Chester Claiborne was brought in last night. My mom was lying. The documents were fake. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare for me. Every time I went to see my grandfather, my mom would find a reason why I couldn't see him. He's sleeping. He has a migraine. The doctor forbade me to visit. He won't recognize you. He'll just get upset. I felt helpless. My mom kept my grandfather in isolation, and I couldn't prove anything. Officially, she was his guardian and had the right to make all the decisions. One day I tried to come early. It was Saturday, 7 in the morning, and I hoped that my mother would still be asleep. But she met me at the door in her bathrobe. Savannah, are you crazy? Dad just fell asleep. He was up all night tossing and turning. Mom, I need to see him. I'm a nurse. I can help. You can help by following the regimen. Doctors say no stress, no emotional outbursts. Behind my mother, from the back of the house, I heard a sound, as if someone had dropped something in the kitchen. Mom quickly looked around. What was that? I asked. Nothing. Maybe the neighbor's cat got in again. But Grandpa had never had a cat, and the neighbor's animals could not get into the house. Mom, at least let me talk to him on the phone. His hands are shaking, he can't hold the phone, and when I pick up the phone, he gets confused, doesn't understand what it is. Each answer sounded logical, but together they painted a picture of complete isolation. A week later, I met my grandfather's neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, at the supermarket. Savannah, how is your grandfather doing? I haven't seen him in the yard for a long time. He is sick. My mom is taking care of him. Yes, I see that he often has visitors. The day before yesterday, there was a man with a briefcase. He looked like a lawyer. And yesterday, a woman in a white coat. And another man in a suit, maybe from the bank. A lawyer? A bank? My mom didn't tell me anything. What about Grandpa? Have you seen him? Once I saw him standing by the kitchen window waving to me. It was 3 days ago in the morning, when your mom was leaving somewhere. He didn't look sick, just sad. So my grandfather was awake all the time. He was conscious and even tried to communicate with the neighbors. Mrs. Peterson, did you hear what the lawyer was talking about? No, I didn't hear it, dear. But your grandfather looked very upset when the man left. And then your mom talked to him for a long time, even shouted a little. That night, I couldn't stand it and came to my grandfather's house at 10 in the evening. The lights were on in the house, and I could hear voices coming from the kitchen. When I went to the window, I saw a scene that turned my soul upside down. My grandfather was sitting at the kitchen table in his old pajamas. He looked tired and confused, but he clearly understood what was happening. Next to him sat a man in a dark suit with a folder of documents open. Mr. Claiborne, you just need to sign here and here, he said, pointing to the papers. But I don't understand. Is this a will? The old man's voice was weak, but he was clearly aware of the situation. Yes, Mr. Claiborne. Your daughter says you want to make changes to your will. I don't remember wanting to change anything. And Savannah, does she know about this? My mom, standing behind my grandfather, put her hand on his shoulder. The movement was gentle, but I could see her fingers clenching. Dad, we talked about this yesterday, and the day before that. You said you wanted to leave everything to me because I take care of you day and night. Did we? I don't remember. My head is so heavy. These medicines. Of course it is. That's why we need to get everything organized while you can still understand the documents. Grandpa rubbed his temples. I could see him struggling with himself, trying to figure out what was right. Is Savannah really okay with this? Savannah is young. She has her whole life ahead of her. I'm going to stay with you until the end, no matter what happens. But she's so good to me. She always comes to help me. Dad, Savannah hasn't been here for a long time. You forget. She's too busy with her work. I wanted to break the window and scream that it was a lie, that I came every day, but my mom wouldn't let me in. But I realized that if I broke in now, I would only confirm for the notary that my grandfather was really sick and did not understand reality. Mr. Claiborne, if you have any doubts, I can postpone the execution until tomorrow, the notary said. No, said Mom sharply. Dad has a clear day today. Tomorrow could be worse. Dad, take a pen. My grandfather looked at the papers, and I could see his mind and the medication fog struggling in his eyes. Gloria, do you promise to take care of Savannah if anything happens to me? Of course, Daddy, she's my daughter. Grandpa took the pen with a trembling hand. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I watched him sign the documents that would disinherit me, not only from my inheritance, but from the ability to take care of him. Sign here, Mr. Claiborne, the notary said softly. Grandpa looked at my mom, then at the papers, and slowly signed. I could see tears running down his cheeks. That's it. It's done, the notary said, collecting the documents. The will comes into force immediately. When the notary left, my mom gave my grandfather some pills. Here, Dad. These will help you calm down after all the stress. Gloria, why do I feel so strange? Like everything around me is unreal. It's the disease, Dad, but don't worry, I'll take care of everything. You don't have to think about anything anymore. Grandpa swallowed the pills and started nodding his head a few minutes later. Mom helped him to the bedroom. I stood in the dark by the window and realized that I had just witnessed a crime. My grandfather had signed his own sentence under the influence of drugs, and I could do nothing. The worst part was realizing that his entire illness was the result of systematic poisoning. For months, my mother gave him drugs that destroyed his mind to make him obedient and controllable. I went home with the only desire to find a way to prove the truth. but how do you fight against fake documents, bribe doctors, and a legally incorrect will? Time was running out. Grandpa was rapidly fading away under the influence of medication, and Mom had already achieved her goal. Every day he was getting worse and worse. My mother continued to isolate him from me. My grandfather died at 5 in the morning on January 22nd, 6 months after that diagnosis. My mom called me at work, her voice calm, almost indifferent. "Savannah, Dad's dead. He had a heart attack. Come home." I dropped everything and went to see him. On the way, I was crying so hard that I had to pull over to the side of the road. Over the past 6 months, I saw my grandfather only a few times when my mom couldn't send me. Every time he looked worse, thin, with a blank look, barely recognizing me. When I arrived, an ambulance was already standing outside the house. My grandfather was being carried out on a stretcher under a white sheet. I ran to him, but the paramedic stopped me. "Miss, excuse me, are you a relative?" "Granddaughter." "I am so sorry. Your grandfather died in his sleep. His heart gave out." His heart gave out. Of course it did. After months of poisoning with antipsychotic drugs, any heart gives up. Mom stood on the porch in a black dress that she seemed to have prepared in advance. Her face was sad, but her eyes sparkled with some kind of inner satisfaction. "Savannah, he died peacefully, without suffering." Without suffering? I saw how my grandfather suffered in the last months, how he fought the medication fog, trying to understand what was happening to him. "Mom, why didn't you call me when he got sick?" It happened very quickly. At 4 in the morning, he woke up and said he had chest pains. I called an ambulance, but they didn't arrive in time. Another lie. The ambulance in our neighborhood arrived in 10 minutes at most. If my mom had really called them at 4, my grandfather could have been saved. The following days passed in a pre-funeral frenzy. Mom organized everything herself, ordered a coffin, flowers, a cafe for the wake. She was extremely efficient for someone who was supposedly grieving for her dead father. "Savannah, can you write the obituary for the newspaper?" she asked me the next day. I sat at my grandfather's kitchen table, where he had signed that damned will just 6 months earlier, and tried to find the words. Chester Claiborne, age 76, died after a long illness. A long illness, how cynical. He leaves a daughter, Gloria, and a granddaughter, Savannah. The funeral will be held on Friday at 2 o'clock in the Greenwood Cemetery. Greenwood. Grandma Rose was buried there 5 years ago. Grandpa always said he wanted to lie next to her. The day of the funeral was gray and rainy, like in a horror movie. Not many people came to the church. A few of my grandfather's old friends, neighbors, and some of my colleagues from work. Dexter and Tiffany sat in the front row, looking bored. For them, it was just a formality. The priest spoke in generalities about a good man who left a bright memory. He did not know the grandfather personally, it was obvious. He talked about the loving heart of my father and grandfather, and I thought about how my mother systematically killed him. After the service, we all went to the cemetery. When the coffin was lowered into the grave, I finally cried for real, not only because of the loss of my grandfather, but also because I couldn't protect him. My mom stood next to me with perfect tears on her cheeks. She even looked like that in her sadness, but I knew that these tears were a performance for others. After the cemetery, we all went to the Zalota Corona Cafe for the wake. Mom ordered a full banquet, salads, meat. My grandfather would have been horrified by such expenses in his honor. He was always modest. During the wake, my grandfather's neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, came up to me. "Savannah, I'm so sorry. Your grandfather was a wonderful man." "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson." "You know, he hasn't been out much these past few months. I was worried about him." Mom said he was very sick. "Maybe, but the one time I talked to him over the fence, he seemed perfectly normal. He was even joking." "When was that?" "A month ago, maybe a month and a half. Your mom was out and he was watering the flowers. He said it was the last thing he could do for Rose to take care of her roses." I felt a lump in my throat. Grandpa had watered the flowers a month ago, so he wasn't as sick as Mom had said. "What else did he say?" "He talked about you. How proud he was that you became a nurse. He said you were the only one in the family who really understood him." Tears came to my eyes again. "Mrs. Peterson, did he say anything about, well, the future, about what will happen to his house after he dies?" The neighbor thought about it. "Yes, he did. He said that the will was ready and that you would be provided for. Literally, he said, Savannah will be provided for. She deserves the best. It was as if I had been electrocuted. My grandfather told a neighbor that I would be provided for. But the will he signed under the influence of drugs left everything to my mother. At 4 o'clock, a man in a dark suit with a briefcase came to the cafe. I recognized him. It was the same notary I had seen in my grandfather's kitchen that terrible night. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the audience, "I am Kenneth Brown. Mr. Claiborne has instructed me to read his will after the funeral." Everyone in the room fell silent. Mom was sitting at the head table with an impenetrable expression, but I could see her fingers drumming nervously on the tabletop. "The will of Mr. Chester Claiborne, made on November 23rd last year," the lawyer began to read. November 23. It was then that I saw my grandfather signing the papers through the window. "I, Chester James Claiborne, being of sound mind and firm memory, hereby bequeath the following." Of sound mind? A firm memory? My grandfather was under the influence of drugs when he signed this. "All my real estate, namely the house at 17 Maple Street, I bequeath to my daughter Gloria Claiborne." Surprised voices rang out in the room. Dexter and Tiffany looked at each other with obvious disappointment. They too had hoped for a piece of the inheritance. "All of my bank accounts and financial assets, totaling approximately $300,000, are also bequeathed to my daughter Gloria Claiborne." $300,000, Grandpa's entire inheritance, the money he earned with his own hands over decades of hard work. "To my granddaughter, Savannah Claiborne, I bequeath my gratitude for her care and—" The lawyer was silent for a moment, as if checking the text. "And my personal effects to her care." I sat there stunned. Not because my grandfather had betrayed me. I knew that the real will was different, but from realizing how skillfully my mother had planned everything. "The will has been signed by Mr. Claiborne in the presence of 2 witnesses and notarized," the lawyer finished. After the will was read, the atmosphere in the room became tense. The guests gradually began to leave, casting sympathetic glances at me. Some even came up and whispered things like, "It's not fair," or "It's strange that your grandfather didn't mention you." My mom came up to me when only a few people were left in the room. "Savannah, I know you're upset, but Dad decided what he thought was right." "Mom, that's weird. Grandpa always said I was special to him." People say a lot of things when they are old, and then, when it comes down to it, they think about those who really care about them. Really cares? The mom who systematically drugged him? "Okay, we'll talk at home." But the conversation did not take place at home. Mom was busy all evening with phone calls, a bank, an insurance company, a real estate agency. She had already started to formalize the inheritance. I went to my grandfather's room to pick up the personal belongings that were bequeathed to me. The room looked as if no one had lived there for months. The bed was neatly made, the clothes hung in the closet, but there was no coziness that had always been there when my grandfather was alive. On the night table was a photo of my grandparents when they were young. They were standing outside their first house, hugging and smiling. They looked so happy. I took the photo and cried, not out of pity for myself, but out of pity for my grandfather. He spent the last months of his life in a medication fog, not understanding what was happening, trusting his daughter who was killing him. The next day, I went to work, hoping that my usual routine would help me distract from my grief. But it was hard to concentrate. All day I thought about the will, about what my grandfather had said to the neighbor, about how my mother had manipulated him. After work, I went to the cemetery. I wanted to be alone with my grandfather, without my mother and her performances. The grave hadn't been finalized yet, just a fresh mound of earth and a temporary nameplate. But nearby grew Grandma's roses, which Grandpa tended to until his last day. I sat on a bench nearby and told my grandfather about my doubts about the will. I told him how much I loved him and how much I would miss him. It may have been strange, but I thought he could hear me. "Savannah?" I turned around. A woman in her 60s was approaching me with a bouquet of flowers. At first I didn't recognize her. "Excuse me, do you know me?" "I'm Dorothy Wilkins. I live across the street from your grandfather. We used to talk over the fence sometimes." Mrs. Wilkins. I had seen her a few times when I visited Grandpa, but I had never talked to her. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Wilkins. I'm so sorry about your grandfather. He was a wonderful man." "Thank you." She placed the flowers on a nearby grave, then came closer. "Savannah, can I talk to you? Something's been bothering me." "Of course." I heard about the will. Your mom told all the neighbors that Grandpa left everything to her. Yes, that's true. But it's strange. Your grandfather told me many times that you would be the only heir. My heart skipped a beat. When did he say that? Many times. The last time was in September, when I was helping him pick pears from the tree. He said, Dorothy, Savannah is the only one in the family who really loves me. When I'm gone, she gets everything. I've already made that arrangement. In September? Yeah. Or maybe even later. In October, when he was watering the flowers, he also mentioned it. He said that he wanted you to be well off, because you were the only one who cared about him. October, a month before he signed the new will under the influence of drugs. Mrs. Wilkins, are you sure that's what he said? I'm absolutely sure. He even told me that after Grandma Rose died, he rewrote the will in your name. He said that Gloria never loved him, and that you were his soulmate. Soulmate? That's what my grandfather used to call me when I was a kid. What's more, Mrs. Wilkins continued, he was very worried about his forgetfulness. He said he was afraid that Gloria would take advantage of it and make him sign something. This was the proof I needed. My grandfather had anticipated that my mother might manipulate him and warned the neighbors about it. Mrs. Wilkins, have you seen how Mom has been taking care of Grandpa these past months? Taking care of him? The woman raised her eyebrows in surprise. Child, I've barely seen your grandfather for the last 6 months. Your mom always said he was sleeping or not feeling well. But once, in the morning, I saw him standing in the window looking out. He looked sad, but not sick. And the medication? You didn't see what medications he was taking? No, but I heard your mom tell the postman that he was taking strong sedatives for dementia. She said the doctors prescribed large doses. All the pieces fit together. My mother not only cheated my grandfather out of his will, she killed him. Slowly, systematically, for money. Mrs. Wilkins, could you repeat all this in court, if necessary? Of course. It's not right that your mother took everything that belonged to you. I went home with a firm decision. I had to fight for the truth, even if it meant going to war with my own mother. That evening I called my mother. Mom, we need to talk. What about? About the will. I know you made Grandpa rewrite it. A pause, then a cold voice. Savannah, I don't know what you're talking about. About the drugs you fed him, about the fake doctors, about how you isolated him from me. You've gone crazy with grief. Dad died, it's sad, but the will is legal. Legal? Mom, I saw you forcing him to sign the documents under the influence of drugs. Prove it. 2 words that cut through the air like a knife. Mom knew I had no direct evidence, only my word against hers. I'll file a lawsuit to contest the will. Go ahead. You will spend money on lawyers and prove nothing. Meanwhile, I'll sell the house and invest the money so you'll never see it. She hung up the phone. I sat there with the phone in my hands and realized that the war had begun. The next morning, I went to the Johnson and Partners law firm. Attorney Michael Johnson listened to my story carefully, sometimes nodding and taking notes. Ms. Claiborne, your story sounds plausible, but it will be difficult to prove anything. The will is notarized. There are witnesses. But my mom gave him drugs. That's a crime. Yes, but where is the evidence? Medical records can be falsified, witnesses can be bribed, and your testimony about what you saw through the window may not be accepted by the court. And what about Mrs. Wilkins? She heard Grandpa talking about the real will. That's good, but that may not be enough. We need physical evidence, medical tests, documents, records. How much will the process cost? $15,000 at least, and that's without a guarantee of success. $15,000, almost all my savings, but I couldn't give up. Okay, I'm ready. Then let's sign the agreement. But, Ms. Claiborne, prepare yourself for an uphill battle. Your mother is obviously a smart woman, and she's prepared. And so began my crusade for justice. Little did I know that months of investigation, hundreds of documents, interrogations, and eventually a chance discovery that would change everything were ahead of me. The trial began 3 months after my grandfather's funeral. Attorney Johnson had warned me it would be difficult, but I hadn't expected such resistance from my mom. She hired attorney Robert Stone, one of Denver's top family lawyers. He was a tall man with gray hair and cold gray eyes who spoke as if every word was worth $100. Your Honor, he said at the first hearing, my client, Ms. Gloria Claiborne, is the rightful heir according to a will notarized in the presence of 2 witnesses. The plaintiff is trying to challenge the will of the deceased solely because of personal grievances. Personal grievances, that's what he called my fight for the truth. My lawyer presented Mrs. Wilkins' testimony, but Stone easily refuted it. The testimony of a neighbor has no legal force. It is hearsay, not fact. Older people often say one thing and do another. Judge Margaret Colise listened attentively, but I could see the skepticism in her eyes. Without physical evidence, my case looked like an attempt by a greedy granddaughter to get an inheritance. Ms. Claiborne, the judge said to me, do you have any documentary evidence that your grandfather was under the influence of medication when he signed his will? Your Honor, I have information about the medications he was taking. What medications the doctor prescribed to treat the diagnosed dementia? Stone interrupted. My client has been diligently following medical advice. The doctor. That fake Dr. Ryder I couldn't prove anything about. Mom had predicted everything. After the first meeting, Johnson was frank. Savannah, this is a difficult case. If we don't find something concrete, we're going to lose. And what could be concrete? Records, documents, testimony from medical staff, someone who saw your mother being forced on your grandfather, something that can be presented to the court as irrefutable evidence. I returned home exhausted. It seemed that my mom had won. She was smarter, more cunning, better prepared. But the next day, something unexpected happened. My mom called me in the morning. Savannah, I want to end this circus. Come to your father's house and take everything you want from his personal belongings. I will sell the house next week. Why all of a sudden? Because I'm tired of the legal fees, and because, against all odds, you are still my daughter. There was a note of fatigue in her voice that I had never heard before. Maybe my mom was really tired of this war. Okay, I will come tonight. Just take everything at once. Tomorrow the appraisers will come. I went to my grandfather's house at 7 in the evening. My mom met me with the keys in her hand. Everything is in the bedroom and in the attic. Furniture, dishes, and other things remain with me. It's in the will. Grandpa's bedroom looked empty without his presence. My mom had already taken everything valuable, his watch, his wedding ring, even his favorite pipe. I was left with photos, old books, and work clothes. I started putting things in boxes. Old photos from the army, diplomas from plumbing courses, letters from my grandmother from their love affair. Each thing told the story of a life that ended so tragically. There were even more memories in the attic. Boxes of Christmas decorations, old tools that Grandpa kept just in case, and another box hidden behind an old mattress. Inside were documents, old checks, receipts, and warranties for equipment, and at the very bottom was a small digital recorder. I picked it up and pressed the play button. At first there was silence, then the familiar voice of my grandfather. September 20th. Today I forgot the name of that nurse from the day center again. Gloria says it's normal, but it scares me. Maybe I should write down what's happening to me. My recorder! Grandpa did keep an audio diary because of his memory loss. I flipped through the recordings. Most were short notes about everyday life, but some made me hold my breath. October 5th. Gloria gave me those white pills again. I tell her they make me nauseous, and she gets angry. She says the doctor prescribed them, but I don't remember any doctor. October 12th. Savannah came, but Gloria wouldn't let her see me. She said I was sleeping, but I was not sleeping. I sat in the kitchen and heard their voices. October 18th. My head is heavy all the time. I cannot understand what is happening to me. Gloria says I'm sick, but I feel that something is wrong, as if she is deceiving me. My heart was beating so hard that I was afraid I wouldn't be able to hear it. This was the proof I needed. I continued to listen. The recordings became more and more disturbing. October 23rd. Today some man came with papers. Gloria said it was a doctor, but he didn't look like a doctor. He looked more like a lawyer. They talked for a long time in the kitchen and sent me to my room. November 5th. I don't understand what is happening to my mind. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's foggy. Gloria says it's dementia, but I suspect she's giving me something else. November 10th. Gloria brought a notary. She says that we need to rewrite the will because the old one is lost. But I don't remember it being lost. And I don't want to rewrite anything. I want Savannah to get everything. My hands shook as I listened to the next entry. November 23rd. I signed the papers tonight. Gloria said it was for my own good, but I didn't realize what I was signing. My head was so heavy after the medication. I cried when I signed. I felt like I was doing something wrong. That was it. a record of the very night I saw my grandfather signing the will through the window. The last entry was dated December 25th. Christmas. Savannah did not come. Gloria says she's busy, but I suspect that's not true. Perhaps Gloria didn't tell her that I wanted to see her. If anyone ever finds this tape recorder. Savannah, baby, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I always wanted you to have everything. You're the only one who ever really loved me. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I listened to those words. My grandfather knew. He understood what was being done to him, but he was too weak to resist. I quickly came down from the attic. Mom was sitting in the living room watching TV. Finished? She asked, not taking her eyes off the screen. Not yet. There are a lot of things. Hurry up, people are coming early tomorrow. I left the house with the recorder in my pocket. This little device changed everything. The next morning, I ran to Johnson's office. He had barely had his morning coffee when I burst in with the recorder. Michael, I found it! He listened to the recordings with increasing amazement. When the last recording ended, he was silent for a long time. Savannah, this changes everything. These recordings are direct evidence that your grandfather was under duress and did not understand what he was signing. What do we do now? Immediately file a motion to postpone the sale of the house, and then a new court hearing with this evidence. Judge Kaliz listened to the tapes in complete silence. When the grandfather's last sentence ended, the room fell silent. Mr. Stone, the judge asked my mother's lawyer, what is your comment on these recordings? Stone was pale but maintained professional restraint. Your Honor, these are the notes of a person with dementia. They cannot be considered reliable. But in these notes, Mr. Claiborne appears to be quite sane and describes specific events. People with mental disorders often create paranoid theories. Mr. Stone, the judge interrupted, can your client explain why she did not inform her granddaughter about her grandfather's condition? Why did she isolate him from his family? The mother sat in the dock with a stone face. When the judge addressed her, she stood up. Your Honor, I was protecting my father from unnecessary stress. The doctors recommended that we limit our contacts. What doctors? There are no medical reports from real doctors in the case file. Stone nervously flipped through the papers but found nothing. The fake documents that had looked so convincing at home could not stand up to professional scrutiny. Your Honor, Johnson stood up. We have an affidavit from Dr. Thompson, the family doctor, who states that he never referred Mr. Claiborne to any specialists. The judge nodded. The case is becoming clearer. Mrs. Claiborne, do you admit that you gave your father medication without medical advice? I was concerned about his condition. That doesn't answer my question. There was a long pause. Finally, my mother said quietly, I didn't think it would be this bad. The room exploded with hushed voices. Mom had actually confessed. Silence in the court, the judge banged her gavel. Mrs. Claiborne, in view of the evidence presented, the court finds the will of November 23rd to be invalid as having been made under duress and in a state of incapacity. I could not believe my ears. Victory. In addition, the judge continued, the case file will be transferred to the prosecutor's office to decide whether to initiate criminal proceedings under the articles fraud and causing intentional harm to health. My mother turned sharply to me. Her eyes were burning with anger, but not the confident anger I had seen before. It was the rage of a defeated person. You have destroyed our family, she whispered. You destroyed it yourself when you started killing Grandpa, I replied. After the court hearing, Johnson explained to me the procedure for recovering the real will. It turned out that my grandfather had indeed rewritten the documents in my name after my grandmother's death. The old will was found in the archives of the notary's office. But the victory came at a price. The next day, Dexter called me for the first time in months. Savannah, what have you done? Mom's in the hospital with a heart attack. What? She took a turn for the worse last night. The doctors say it's stress. She could die. I felt a stab of guilt. Despite everything that had happened, Mom was still Mom. Which hospital? St. Mary's. But she doesn't want to see you. I went to the hospital, but my mom really refused to see me. The nurse said only one thing. Tell her I don't have a daughter anymore. These words were enough to break my heart completely, but the fight was not over yet. A week later, after my mother was discharged from the hospital, I filed a petition to exhume my grandfather's body. Johnson objected at first. Savannah, this is a last resort. It's also very painful for you. I want to prove that my mom poisoned him. Otherwise, she can get away with it. But the body was buried 3 months ago. It's not certain that they'll find traces of the drugs. We'll try. The exhumation procedure was horrible. I did not watch when the coffin was lifted, but I was present when the body was handed over to the experts. The results came back 2 weeks later. In the tissues of my grandfather, they found residues of haloperidol and risperidone in concentrations several times higher than the therapeutic doses. These concentrations could lead to a heart attack, the expert explained, especially in an elderly person. Mom didn't just manipulate her grandfather, she killed him. The criminal trial lasted 6 months. Mom was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud and manslaughter. She didn't say a word during the sentencing, but when she was being led out of the courtroom, she looked at me with such hatred that I felt chills. Dexter and Tiffany completely distanced themselves from me after my mom's conviction. In their opinion, I had betrayed my family for money, but I knew the truth. I was fighting for my grandfather's memory and justice. When all the legal proceedings were over, I found myself in possession of my grandfather's house and bank account. $450,000 is a huge sum for an ordinary girl like me. The first thing I did was to repair my grandfather's grave. I installed a beautiful granite monument with a photo of my grandparents together. The inscriptions were simple: Chester and Rose Claiborne, together forever. Then I sold my grandfather's house. I couldn't live there after everything that had happened. I bought a small apartment closer to the city center and started a new life in a new place. But the most important decision was to create the Second Home Charity Foundation. I donated $200,000, most of my fiat inheritance, to the foundation. The foundation helps elderly people who suffer from abuse by their relatives. Why do you give away almost everything? A journalist asked me when he was writing an article about the foundation. Because the money won't bring my grandfather back, but it can save someone else's grandparents. I stayed working as a nurse in the nursing home, but now I had the opportunity to help not only professionally but also financially. When I saw suspicious bruises on patients or strange behavior of their relatives, I did not keep silent. One day, a year after my grandfather's death, I was summoned to court as a witness in an octogenarian woman's abuse case. Her son had been feeding her sleeping pills so that she would sign the documents for the sale of her apartment. "How did you realize that abuse was taking place?" the prosecutor asked. "By the eyes," I answered. There is always fear in the eyes of the victim, and in the eyes of the abuser, there is cold calculation. The woman was saved, the son received a suspended sentence, and I felt that my grandfather was proud of me somewhere in heaven. 2 years have passed since my grandfather died. I still come to his grave every Sunday, talk about my work and the people I help. Sometimes it seems that he listens to me. My mother was released on parole for good behavior. She lives in another city and works as a cashier in a supermarket. We do not communicate. I don't know if she regrets what she did. I hope she does. Dexter sometimes calls on birthdays. We talk about the weather and work, avoiding painful topics. Tiffany had a baby, but I wasn't invited to the christening. Our family broke up and I accepted it, but most importantly, I learned to live without anger. At first, hatred for my mother ate me up from the inside, but over time, I realized that anger is a chain that binds me to the past. My grandfather would not have wanted me to hate my mother all my life. He would have wanted me to be happy, and I am learning to be happy. I have a job that I like. I have the opportunity to help people. I have memories of my grandfather that no one can take away. This is more than many people have. Sometimes when I work late in a nursing home, I look at my patients and think, each of them is someone's grandparent. Everyone deserves love and respect. Everyone has a story worth telling. My grandfather taught me the most important thing: money comes and goes, but love remains forever. And the real victory is not in getting an inheritance, but in keeping the memory of the person who loved you. I have kept this memory, and I will always keep it.